Namaste, dear blessed and sacred ones and God's sovereign hearts, Gridwork and cosmic family. Welcome back to the channel Indigo Angel. Come on into this dimension and come on into this 1111 portal gateway energy update where I'm going to go over really just what to expect through this energy gateway, what has already been occurring, and what are some of the observations and information and data collection I've took from the Gridwork, the most recent Gridworker mission that we did at Mt.Pinnacle. So I have so much to get in with you guys today, as I feel like it's been far too long. I took a good, I would say 2 to 4 weeks kind of off of YouTube, and upon returning from the most Gridworker mission that I really needed just some personal healing time. I feel to allow my body to integrate all of the energy and just kind of almost rebuild back my light body field, as there was just so much to process from all of the grid work. And so really, I just needed some downtime. And I've really been giving into a lot of my own personal comforts at home and just organizing, like cleaning my house, which really needed the attention, going through old things that had old energy attachments to them, and, just purifying my space, which I have to say, it has been so amazing and so rejuvenating to just clean everything and organize everything. So, if you've been procrastinating to go clean that room or go organize that room, I just want to say, just pick yourself up and just devote a whole day to doing it if you can, because it really will make you feel 100 times better after you do it. I mean, even reorganizing furniture. I finally got my bed space moved to sleeping to the east from the way that the sun rises. So there's just all these little adjustments that were made in my environment and my living space, which really created a stronger sense of comfort. And I think anytime that you're going through a space that you're needing to replenish, you're needing to restore, you're needing to rejuvenate, you're needing to heal yourself on so many levels, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that putting yourself in an environment where you can feel really good about your belongings and your things and your space, and which is organized and tidy and clean, and you got rid of the clutter, you got rid of all of the things that are attached to old memories or even like past versions of yourself that are just not you anymore. I know sometimes that we acquire like all these little knick-knack type of things that, like, yeah, I got this when I was like going through this phase and that phase of my spirituality and my consciousness, but I don't really see some of these things serving who I am now. Like, I'm stepping into a new version of myself. I'm stepping into a new way of being and existing and living. And so sometimes it feels really good to shed some of those things and to depart with some of the things that are just holding space that represent a version of you that you're transitioning or transforming out of. So, yeah, I just want to say highly recommend doing a deep dive or a deep clean on the house and getting your stuff into a way in which makes you feel really, really good about. So I'm so thankful to have had the time to do that. And I'm really excited because I really feel like we have made such a huge transition and jump into the New Earth timelines. We've really come to a place in which I think we're aligning more with God more and more, and our spirituality and our connection to Source and the angels, that this is just showing us in so many ways, right? How miracles are happening and how shifts are changing, and we're seeing substantial things occur in our new timelines. And so this 1111 portal that is coming tomorrow, um, I feel that we need to be just very spiritually aware of this sacred alignment. It's really truly a godly alignment, and It's highly activated. It's the one and only 1111 frequency that comes around on November 11th. It's also Veterans Day. So, some of us might be celebrating and honoring American veterans for their patriotism, the love of our country, and the willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good, right? Or this is what the narrative is, the controlled narrative about this. But really, I mean, we know that a lot of these good-hearted souls and people sacrificed on behalf of the illness of mankind, truly, and the war-driven and war-torn mind. And so for me, Veterans Day is somewhat of a mourning. There's somewhat of a deep need to release of grief, which has been coming up over and over and over and over again in terms of grid work and things that I observed in Arkansas. But so it's 1111 is a little bit of mix of both worlds, right? Like releasing long overdue grief that has been with us not only ancestrally and through the centuries, but also on a personal level, like really taking the time to honor and recognize and acknowledge the places in which you have been victimized in your life and where you have been hurt. This is something that I see with people all the time in session work is that many have not had the opportunity or the chance to really deeply recognize the pain and the betrayal or the sabotage that they've experienced through the victim victimizer programs. And we can call it a program, but they're real realities in which we are engaging with through others, through our relationships. And so a lot of times we build these strong walls, we build these strong shields, and we just have to be strong to survive. We just have to, push through in terms of like, sometimes bypassing that grief, sometimes bypassing the hurt just to kind of push through to the next thing. And I can tell you guys, if this is you, because this has been me for the last few months, I'll be honest with you, like I've put a pin in so many things in which I needed to deeply release and I needed to work through and I needed to heal. But I put the pin in and I just moved through and I marched through to be strong and to get the work done and to get the missions done and to get, all of the dreams that I have, aspired to accomplish in a lot of ways. And I did that to put the pin in my pain. I did that in some way to put the pin in my grief. And, when I got home, I realized that that can only carry you for so long, right? Before it's like you will take a crash. You will crash if you don't like truly allow yourself to gently work through what it is that you need to work through in terms of the lack of sovereignty, the victimization, where you feel like something has come against you in an unfair or unbalanced way, all of these things, right? So when I got back home, I just knew that my body had kind of took a crash from putting that pin in. So I recognize so much more clearly now the significance of don't try to swallow your grief, don't try to swallow your despair, don't try to swallow um, whatever it is that you truly need on a personal level just to push through for something even better or greater. If you have to take time for yourself to do it, you definitely should. And you should allow yourself to go to the depth of your pain. You should allow yourself to go to the depth of your grief and get comfortable with feeling those energies. Because if you can say to yourself in your deepest grief and in your deepest pain body that I am safe and I am allowed to have this experience, I am allowed to heal. I'm allowing myself to heal. I also didn't realize how much, because of our pain, we feel like it's so justified. We feel like the pain is so, um, which oftentimes is associated with anger, right? So let's say we go through something really painful and we have a lot of anger. A lot of times we hold on to our anger to keep the shields. We hold on to the anger to not allow ourselves to heal, to not allow ourselves to forgive. And I recognized I was holding the shield that wasn't allowing me to heal or to allow higher energies in the body, angelic energies, God, source, the angels, even crossed over loved ones, like my crossed over ancestors. Like I was pushing these things away, right, from coming in to heal me because I felt like holding on to my anger was justified, but really at the end of the day, it was hurting me. So I want to say that if this is you that see yourself truly as righteous of your healing, try to work to shift what those blocked spaces of resentment truly are. Take lots of nice deep breaths in and out and let healing move in and through your body, through your lungs, through your organs, and call upon it into you. Allow that to come into you because I can tell you that the angels surely are with those that are in the deepest pain. This is kind of like their specialty. This is why there's so much mystique and mystery around the death and rebirth planes and dimensions and realms. Um, Angels truly assist the soul. They truly assist the spirit. So whatever the spirit is crying out for, it's there waiting for you to help you, but it's up to you to release the humanism within you to allow that thing to come in to restore you. So, it's been quite the journey upon coming back home. So much has shifted for me, and that's why I'm just loving this 1111 portal. I feel like this is a really significant positive portal because not only are the veils still really thin, like going through Samhain and Halloween, I know a lot of us that are psychic and in tune to the mediumship realms, like the veils blew wide open this year. I think even at a higher level than they ever have before. So much engagement and interaction with those in the afterlife and the unborn planes. And so that veil is still really thin during this time cycle, even now. Some say that it closes a couple days after Halloween, but I really don't think it does. I think that it opens up and it lasts through the winter months. It lasts through the winter cycle and through the winter solstice. And so the medium realms are very visible at this time, and the angelic fields are more clearly moving in and through to aid and assist and shift. I would say the angels are more abundant during the time that the veil is thin because they can make such more easy contact in spirits and souls and energies in all realms. And so we have so much more to access now in the psychic realm. So it's really a beautiful time. And I think you can experience more of the 0 point field, um, more full convergences or completions in your timelines or your cycles. And I think we can tune in more with the atonement with Source and our true inner divine self, which is what we're always being mirrored and directed back to, no matter what it is in life, no matter who it is that you connect with. You're always going to be redirected back to the true inner spiritual self and soul, in which holds that spirit inside us of our core identity. And I think there's a purification that's coming through this 1111 and portal for us to purify more of our soul and spirit within the higher angelic alignment. And I think that a lot of divine wishes are being granted at this time. Prayers that may had been stuck before, they're moving in and through. And in all the realms, right? The life and death passageways. I think that justice right now is also being initiated. So, where maybe you've gone a long time with giving so much of yourself in some way that there's karmic debt, there's karmic retribution that has to be paid. The 1111 is the infinity loop cycle. So, things will get mirrored now at this time more. Things will be more seen in terms of the polar oppositions. This is definitely an alignment within the infinity, and where we have polar mirroring effects that occur. They're more harmonious. more for the sense or the certainty of, again, development of the soul and the spirit of the individual, but also the collective. But this is also going to allow us to have more vision. This is going to allow us to have more clarity in our choices moving forward. Um, Even in relationship situations, twin flame soul union situations, you're going to have more clarity, I think, about the direction of your status in those relationships, whether you're moving forward or you're moving back, or it's time to break the infinity cycle within that karmic soul contract. But I think overall it's amplifying more harmony at this time due to Venus going into Capricorn for 1111 as well. So whatever has been ungrounded, um, and whatever needs to be rerouted, it's going to find balance and a harmonious foundation again. So it's been a beautiful experience, I would say overall. And this portal just, I think it's signifying that whatever downward spiral that you were on, it is going to suddenly shift. You are going to finally have a sense of some ease. You're gonna feel light again where the darkness was so encroaching or heavy or impactful in terms of your ability to sustain yourself within it. I think that you're past the hump, so to speak. And I think that we're leaving the past in the past. So the things that once seemed so internally hard, you may have really felt the spark of inspiration and transformation starting to come through. You're healing, you're growing, and just staying true to who you are. And this self-soulful and actualized alignment is only going to amplify this progress that we're going through 1111. And just know that our connections to the angelic realm are going to be stronger at this time. More synchronicities, more alignment with those repeating number patterns, more alignment within telepathy, more ability to read people's minds and thoughts, whether you're with them or you're not, and just higher levels of clairvoyancy and higher levels of prophecy and more clarity around your future. I wouldn't be surprised if the future portals completely open tomorrow and many people are kind of receiving a download from a future 5-year version or future 10-year version of themselves to anchor more of the manifestation abilities from the higher ascended aspects of those versions in the future. So, yeah, gotta love this portal so much. I hope you guys are excited for it. Just know that you may want to set some beautiful intentions tonight before you go to sleep. I know that I will be doing that. I'll be clearing my energy and I'll be probably writing out a manifestation template to bring forward some of my desires and wishes. And I really think that it's a good time to do it. So you should do it too. Now, speaking of the future, so I did want to leave some of my comments and predictions. As you guys all know already, that Trump has won the elections. As I think most of us predicted that he would, I think that was something that was very obvious to see amongst social media, amongst friends, and the collective. I think most people were kind of oriented towards voting for Trump. And so, I did recognize that as I was taking note of everything. So I just really pray that this is in divine alignment and is in the divine plan and what needs to be done on a higher level of consciousness for the collective highest good and highest healing and highest timeline to play everything out in the most divine way. And so I just send a lot of good vibes and prosperity and abundance and freedom and healing for America through this 1111 current um, for Trump's victory. And, I've been watching a lot of other worldly leaders and their speeches and their perceptions of America and our elections and da 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 da. And I know it's all muddied in the water and that there are a lot of propaganda and things being skewed from multiple perspectives, right? Um, I do feel, though, that personally his re-election symbolizes in some way to the rest of the world that i- Americans really do not trust their own Willy Wonka. Like, we do not trust our own government system. I seen Putin speaking about this, how they asked him at one point, they said, well, if Trump gets reelected, what does this tell you about America? And he said that it means that Americans don't trust their government, that they're actually choosing the candidate in which will be a system buster, the one that will challenge the narrative, so to speak, because of the distrust. So at the end of the day, I really feel like it's this sense of separation from safety in the government that's becoming stronger and louder and louder. I think it's a reckoning and it's a restructuring from the inside. And, now I think worldly leaders in other countries are really starting to see where America stands according to our choices, because a re-election after two acquitted impeachments, which being acquitted means that he was not charged or found guilty or convicted of those impeachments. But I feel like on some level, it means that our judicial system is degenerating. Like, our judicial system just doesn't carry the same amount of credibility that it used to have. Same with the federal government, same with the banking systems, right? Like, I think people just don't really give it the same power that it used to essentially have. And so, on some level, I feel like it represents a crumbling or a failing of the government from state to federal levels, where legal matters and persecution and conviction is now really not intolerable measures. Like, these are measures in which are tolerable, and it's really about how people feel at the end of the day. I see a lot of the logic going out the window. If you think about what policies and law and legalities represent, like, they represent a lot of logical way of going about something without the heart. And so I think as America wakes up more to the degeneration of our judicial system, um, people are coming more into the heart space to feel what's right and what's true, according to their heart consciousness, which I think is very important and very imperative at this time, that we learn to recognize the power and the intelligence of the heart versus just being solely in the mind, right? Where our value systems and how we measure what is okay and what's not are slowly and gently shifting and changing. And I think this is something that has been looming in the air for quite some time now, even prior to 2020. I remember living in Denver, Colorado, and this is like along with a lot of the listed reasons as to why I don't reside there anymore. One of them was that, I noticed that the crime completely increased in the city. Most of the cops just didn't take people to jail anymore for certain things that they used to take people to jail for. Um, I noticed that a lot of the legal bureaus and jurisdictions for enforcement of things, like the police and other types of organizations, were being less supported and less funded. And some might say, oh, that's due to, the governor of Denver and all of this and that. But I feel like it's bigger than that. It's us again changing where our value systems really measure and truly align. And so, just my kind of prediction over the next 4 years with Trump being in presidency is that I really feel like there is a potential for ratification of the Constitution. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if things like this come on the table and if things like this start to arise, that democracy as a whole, we may be entering the unknown time. We may be entering a time or a twilight in which the democracy could be essentially challenged moving forward, because I think people, again, and how other leaders around the world see him, is they kind of see him as a system buster. So he may have been sent here for the next 4 years to bust this system and change the systems, and may even potentially have certain things permanently altered. And what does that look like for our future if we enter a time in which the Constitution gets changed, or democracy as a whole, or the way we go about government is altered and changed. So it's one thing to keep in mind as we prepare ourselves for the coming of the new Earth timelines, that we know that ultimately, in order for us to get to these places where new potentials can exist in terms of how we exist, how we co-create, how we treat each other, how we build this new Earth, that it's coming through the perpetuality of change in timelines, a constant state of shifting, a constant change that will usher in the new Earth timeline. So, really, our greatest gift and our greatest quality at this time truly is adaptability. It truly is learning how to flow, but also um, be adaptable with, I guess, the changing value structures in some way, having to replant and refine value as values shift and change, or as values begin to conserve and restructure from the conservation of the foundation. So, yeah, this is kind of my thoughts on it. I wanted to briefly speak to, the politics a little bit. I don't like to talk about this stuff too much as it gets you into trouble and muddy waters, especially, publicly on YouTube and things like this. But um, I just wanted to let you guys know that I think that we may be looking at just revolutionary type acts that are ultimately going to occur over the next 4 years. I think big changes globally, worldly, all of it, which leads me to why I think it's so important that you guys come and join me for the next remote grid worker mission. So, guys, this is going to be the next grid worker mission. I gave this some deep thought. I really feel like this is the next direction we need to go. Um, Having returned from Mt.Pinnacle Gridwork mission and the activation of the dove light, the Christed consciousness, the awakening of the 144 crystalline grid, and the 12 solar sun disk activation that we did at Mt.Pinnacle, I think it's important for us to keep the momentum of those peace codes and just highlight this for our Gridwork mission, remote mission for November, where we're going to focus on Israel, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, World War III, and the Abrahamic bloodline Anunnaki religious wars. Because it's going to be very important moving forward with what we're dealing with internationally in the world. There are major implications for the rest of the world because of what's occurring here. Relationships between leaders and all of this is changing. And, I even, after Trump got elected, I heard that the Iranian regime was planning or plotting to kill President Trump. I don't know if any of you've heard of that, but it came in right after his elections that there was some sort of plot for um, the Iranian regime to, um, I guess, plot on President Trump. So there's definitely a lust for conquer and divide, a lust for killing and murderous acts, a lust for a conquest of power that drives nations to war, threats, and attempts of certain things as well. And so, again, we want to just try to, through our efforts of meditation, focused grid work on particular locations in which we know war is occurring, tuning in and tapping in, and bring the intention to dissolve all of these war-minded bodies to try to reestablish cooperation and unity within the hearts of men, and um, do this with activating sacred guardian rescue locations like sites like Mount Natai, the Valley of the Doves, which is where we sent a lot of the Christed consciousness and light energy to. Also, Mount Olives in Israel, carrying the olive branch codes for humanity. So I think we need to keep working on this as a grid worker family and team. So be sure to look down in the description below, and you'll find the link to join this grid worker mission. It's going to be November 26th, 2024 at 1 p.m. CST. That's 2 days before Thanksgiving, which I kind of wanted to do it on Thanksgiving, but I think it will be a little hard to swing it on that day, but I love doing grid worker missions on holidays. I feel like they're so much more significant and so much more powerful. But this will be 2 days before November 26th, 1 p.m. CST. You can join by signing up for my Patreon, or you can join by clicking on the link below and just doing a one-time drop-in for that. But yeah, so I was at Mt.Pinnacle. It was truly an amazing experience. I think that we were there during a beautiful time of the year where the leaves are changing, and I really appreciated um, getting to see a lot of the colors in the trees in the fall time, everything shifting into the oranges, into the reds, into the yellows and all of this. So it just added a nice, element to the Mount Pinnacle grid work and just enjoying the nature there. But after that, grid worker mission, I really, really needed so much time, like as I discussed in the beginning, to process all that I experienced upon arriving home. So when I got home, my body did seem to take a little bit of a crash. I needed to heavily integrate the consciousness, the land, the energy, my experiences. I had to really process and transmute a lot through my body. And so I do believe that this occurred because the land there, I noticed, was not really able to support the 12th dimensional soul body blueprint. It really did seem like the frequency vibration coming up from the inner earth in Arkansas was functioning at about 1/12 of the supportive land frequency in which can sustain the 12th dimensional body. So we think about ascension, we think about shifting up from the fourth to the sixth to the eighth to the 10th to the 12th strands of DNA activated. When you have your 12th dimensional blueprint activated, you're in complete unity, you're in complete harmony, you are entirely in a universal mind, you are at ease, there is no fear, there is no worry, there is no aggravation, there are no triggers, there are no negative ego. There is a sense of just full spiritual liberation and freedom, truly, and a lot of easy accessibility into the astral and the auric realms, the causal realms, the holographic realms, the um, angelic realms, easily accessing the angelic heart, in which I talked about going from the higher heart even into the angelic heart. And so we, I just noticed that the frequency was about 1/12. It was 1/12 of the supportive land frequency. And so I realized that truly we can sustain a 12-dimensional blueprint on land that doesn't carry those codes, but we can't sustain it for long periods of time. And it's difficult to maintain the 12-dimensional soul body blueprint if you're on land that doesn't support or raise or even uplift that um, within the land around you. And so I never realized how significant or important that was until you travel to other places and recognize that there are certain lands that sustain that and there are certain lands that deplete that. Specifically, going from Hawaii to Arkansas, Hawaii is a place where your 12th dimensional soul body blueprint is very supported. Arkansas is a place in which it's just not supported. It's literally, yeah, again, 1/12 of what's needed to sustain that. So it's like you're really getting sustained in the first dimensional fields. That's about where your sustainment resides. So you're lacking in the second, you're lacking in the third, you're lacking in the fourth, you're lacking in the fifth, right? And so on and so forth. You're not having the land sustain and abundantly support the higher timelines and support the higher light body. So I do find that it's not just Arkansas, okay? So I'm not picking on Arkansas. It's really truly the mainland as a whole. This entire mainland has lots of blockages. It has basically all of the inner passageways. Let's say the mainland should technically, through the inner earth, should be connected to places like Hawaii, should be connected to supportive guardian rescue Stargate areas like Niagara Falls and Mount Shasta and Mato Tapila. the Devil's Tower, Sedona, places, right, that can sustain those 12D body soul energy, light body fields. But essentially, it's cut off everywhere. It's really cut off. The inner earth passageways are exploited. And so this to me, I didn't understand how at first, um, going into it, how like important that was. And so once I recognized how the cave systems, the inner earth passageways, the underground portals, okay, that they're being exploited, that they're basically stuck, they're basically backed up, they're basically like an internal digestive system in which is not healthy, right? Like because the inner earth cave systems are kind of like the bowels of the earth and they represent the bowels of humanity. And so these are like blocked. These are like filled with smog and they're filled with dense energy. And so this really set off an alarm bell. Okay, why is it that this beautiful body of land is not being supported from the inner earth passageways as in its full potential? So I'm recognizing this according to the land and what is unhinged and what is inadequate according to the new earth timelines. We need these inner earth passageways to be free flowing, to be repaired, and to be healed ultimately for us to be able to um, basically repair America as a whole and to allow the mainland to be supported in terms of the energy passageways to be able to lay the groundwork for New Earth because America is still the groundwork for New Earth. But the land here on the mainland is not ready. Okay. There's still a lot of work for us to do as grid workers with preparing the mainland, preparing the main home for the coming of the new earth, the coming of the future light cities, the golden light cities, and the crystal cities. And so I still recognize Mt.Pinnacle as a future crystal city emergence location, but it is going to need some deeper work in terms of grid work. We're going to have to prepare these inner earth passageways and gateways, I think more at the coastal points, more at the coastal regions. I feel like we need to do a full-on scan as to where did the true inner earth passageways and soul river lines truly travel in the North Americas under the land? Where is the bulk zones for heavy inner earth cave systems? And what is occurring in these cave systems that keep the energy from being pure and purified, and for us being able to draw up healthy energy to the land from the inner earth? So, what is keeping America binded? The remedy and the cure is what is going on underneath the ground. Once we can get to the root of that as grid workers and spiritually work to transmute and unbind whatever's stuck and block in those passageways, I think we'll significantly see the vibration and frequency being upgraded quite a bit. So there's always just so many layers to this, right? As you become a grid worker and as you get that boots on the ground experience and learn by having your body present, your consciousness, your spirit, your mind, your heart, and your psychic intuition attuned to the grid worker holographic geometry and architecture to make these appropriate assessments of what's occurring. A lot of the veteran type grid workers, like you have a full on 360-degree perception of the inner and the outer world of what's occurring, and you recognize that these energy structures are the root for what sustains us. We can't combat these frequency fences and we can't combat these artificial negative directed energy weapons and bioweapons, okay, and HAARP systems and J seals if we if the inner earth passageways and cave systems are blocked, right? We can't even live off of first dimensional frequency. Like that is just one of the reasons why so many people are suffering energetically, struggling energetically, their health is deteriorating. This is a full-on land, inner earth passageway problem and issue that I feel like we really need to get to the bottom of. So Mt.Pinnacle is a focus, I think, continually for this. It's definitely still an apex point that is a central point of information that contains the quality of solar life force energy running on this magnetic grid in the North America. So I think it was very important to take note of all of my findings here. It is a powerful convergence point, I think, for the inner Earth dynamics between the crystal caverns and the cave systems. And it's just a spot that overall highlights the quality and well-being of that crystal consciousness for the North Americas, having high crystal quality in the land itself. So, yeah, that's some of my concerns is that the crystals are being targeted there. One of the things that I really tuned into was the exploitation of the crystals. You might think, oh, this is so fun. We're going crystal mining. And oh, like we had so much fun, honestly, doing it. Like the dirt and the minerals gives you energy and you're in there digging and it's kind of fun. But you think, and they call it a vein. Like they call these crystal points veins. So they're basically fracturing and cracking open a vein, okay, and then exploiting the crystals. Okay, that's a deep actual wounded pain body. It's a sore spot in the planet. It's a point that actually needs to be healed. You think about all of the diamond mines that have been exploited out of Africa, and why Africa is under so much torment and warfare when it comes to the country being exploited for resources even beyond the diamonds. I mean, they were the most exploited continent in terms of slavery and things like this. There's something about exploiting the crystal bodies, the gem bodies, the diamond bodies, w- obsidian caverns, whatever it is, when the crystal caverns get exploited, this is a detrimental sign and symptom that the land is struggling more so than it is humans are benefiting from taking those crystals out. So honestly, I really didn't even feel guided to take so many crystals. A lot of the crystals we just gave back, that actually was kind of the foundation for the Mount Pinnacle activation at the top of the mountain, which by the way, I'll leave links down in the description. If you haven't seen that video yet, I suggest you go and watch it because it really was a beautiful ceremony, very powerful. It's actually doing very well on TikTok. I'll leave my TikTok link below as well. Go and check it out over there because there's just way more views and way more sharing that I think algorithm wise is allowed over on TikTok. But um, I really think that the mission was successful overall, but there was another key to this mission that really came up, and this was I didn't recognize how much focusing on the Trail of Tears would shift our mission focus into recognizing the presence of entrapped and stuck souls. Now, we went at the time of Somain, right? So we're going at a time where the veil's already thinning so much, but this was prior to that. But really, I mean, I think we had a sacred brother there that was getting a lot of downloads confirming that it wasn't just like souls stuck in the thousands or like the hundreds. It was like millions and billions of souls that were stuck that were getting crossed while we were there. And so there was a strong presence and need for helping entrapped and stuck souls in the in-between realms, the purgatory density locks, because those were very significant at Mount Pinnacle. And this, again, I feel like is due to the inner earth passageways being blocked. So think about that. If you think about the natural process of death, being buried in the ground, your soul drifting into the soul river lines, whether that's through actual rivers, crystal veins, um, ley lines, canyons, whatever it is, it's making its way towards typically a higher dimensional guardian stargate network, in which is going to process your soul and spirit through the Earth's body. Speaking of Christ and Christed consciousness in the true Essene manuscripts, this is what Christ speaks about is honor thy mother because your physical body and your soul will go through the mother. It goes through those guardian stargates. This is why they're called the cradle of life portals. This is why they're called the stairways to heaven. This is why they're um abundant in the spiritual realm and the angelic kingdoms, is because they're there to process the collective soul and life and death processes, right? They sustain this. So why that's so stuck in Arkansas is because, I mean, if those gateways are blocked, if the veins are busted open, if the cave systems are exploited and energy can't flow through, if those cave systems are sick, guess what we're going to be left with on the surface of the land? We're going to be left with purgatory density locks, what almost felt like parallel pastimes that are in a state of recycling through the land and time portal passages with a sense of a haunting. Like they're not being able to fully go through. So no release because the energetic soul river lines and the natural processes, they're blocked in the most imperative places. So yeah, the living light expression was often dulled. Whatever living light you could tap into there, it was often dulled by a foreshadowing of an ache of the heart, an ache of the lost, an ache of the forgotten, an ache of the tragedy and a trauma, and the remembering of unjust things, like justice hadn't been served, like the natural processes of cleansing and purifying were not able to fully rec reclimate themselves on those lands. So I just felt an immense amount of soul entrapment due to the suffering of our American history, and what has just essentially occurred against the sovereignty of life, all the way from the Native Indian Removal Act to the major corporations that, you know, decided to run Warhorse, I think it's the Black Horse or the Red Horse, and run Plague and Famine, basically in 2020. Like there's still all of that that's backed up energetically and spiritually. And so things like the colonizer and colonized programs, the victim victimizer programs, and the forces of change that come through with the seed of fear that's programmed deep down in the primordial imprints of separation, it's just there and it's holding on to hold everything binded to it. Yeah, soul entrapment due to the Trail of Tears, Trail of Suffering. I was calling it the Trail of Torture and Destruction. We stayed at a place called the True Trail. And so I really tried to, while I was there, in terms of, I think my personal mission work was to shine a light on the trail of transformation, shine a light on the trail of truth, shine a light on the trail of new possibilities that the souls stuck in the afterlife and the purgatory realms could be fully released. I'll leave a link down in the description to the video I did of me doing those prayers. And I just want to say, if you have any loved ones that you feel need help being passed, um, again, because the veils are so thin and we're at this time that it's a good time to do things like that. If you've sensed that some things are stuck, you can definitely use this prayer. Like this prayer could work for any type of transformation um, within the life and death realms and helping to clear and pass souls. So feel free to use that prayer. But I think that what the natives experienced on our soil, um, it's just really has brought such a haunting presence amongst the woods and trees there. That was one thing I noticed is the woods and trees carried a living, like purgatory ancestral feeling. Like you could feel the natives in the trees in the woods. You could feel their ancestors. The trees and woods in Arkansas definitely really spoke. Like they had their own words that they would speak into the wind. And so you could always hear the presence of the shallows of the afterlife there, in the lakes and rivers, and really a lot of the fog and mist that would conjure up on the banks of the lakes and rivers as well. This really was eerie, to be honest with you. I've spoke about mist and fog being the carriers of souls in the afterlife, and I think that this really was prevalent there at Lake Hamilton, where we were staying. And so that flows up into the cities, that flows up into the houses. Like the houses were somewhat haunted, the cities were somewhat haunted. Um, there's a lot of paranormal like realizations and activity that was always occurring, like even in the middle of the night, like random things, like noises and just like the presence lets itself be known. And so I noticed that I would also feel like a buzzing too that would start to cause triggers. Okay, whether it's triggering somebody's ego or whether it's triggering impatience, intolerance, unkindness, just whatever it was, there was always like somewhat of a buzzing, and it was because it was asking for something. The buzzing, the mist, the fog, it was asking for something. It was asking to pay attention to spirit. It was asking to pay attention to what is the true meaning, what is the true feeling, what is the true essence, what is the grief that's here. So yeah, we had a lot of strange things happen. A breaking of a huge, large glass. There was just a lot, a lot of little aggravations that occurred that um, I think we're just trying to really catch our attention, pushing us to seek either the awareness of it or shift us into a new space to maybe catch our attention there. But overall, there was somewhat of a feeling of unrest that was kind of playing out and occurring that I noticed. It really felt like the Trail of Tears had some sort of base level for soul entrapment in terms of all soul harvesting that was occurring within humanity. Like, as if that soul entrapment, it's being recorded in the planetary Akash within the first three levels of base density structures in the land and then according to the world. And so I really think that these trauma levels, first, second, and third, which contain all the trauma, right? There's like a network of this that spans to all war zones in the planet, all genocidal zones in the planet, all um extinction events in the planet, according to war or, um, patriarchal predatorial forces in which seek to dominate land. I mean, the war is always over the land, and you have to think about that as well, right? And so, I think what's occurred there in terms of the trailer tiers is binded in between the American Universal Tree of Life root systems and then binded into the Planetary Universal Tree of Life root system. So it's really felt all over the world. And it's one of the reasons why, as a human collective, we cannot escape human accumulated grief. Okay, we might vibe high and we might transcend this on a personal level, but that always will be there as a human collective for us to have to come back to and transmute. And so I recognized it within the primordial imprints of separation. The first level that I felt in the 1D, where it was barely being sustained vibrationally, was containing shock. Okay, it was containing almost like the feeling of someone has just been recently abused and they're in a yeah, like the shock state or they're stunned, right? They're stunned. It was the trauma dimension and it was the devastation dimension. Again, that's what's being sustained. The second density field, okay, I noticed that's where the lack of trust came in. That's where the lack of trust in spirit, of course. And then the third density layer was where the betrayal was. It's where the polarity was. It's where the abandonment was. And so the two work together. The betrayal and abandonment come in together. So they kind of go hand in hand. But the next one that I felt overall was just the fear, and this kind of wrapped up all of them together. And this shifted into unworthiness. This one shifted into shame. This one shifted into guilt. So between all of those densities and emotions that are held within those collective reality fields within the land, this is where you get that soul entrapment. This is where you get what's trapped, right? This is what traps it. And I recognized that I was held back from some of the activities there, specifically because I had a personal mission, which was that I needed to, because I have such a strong like sensitivity to feelings and psychically and emotionally really tune and tap in with people's emotions, good or bad, right? I was being called to grieve. I was being called to grieve for those that could not grieve for themselves. Um, and so a lot of spirits presented themselves to me for me to be able to access that, to willingly do that on behalf of those that couldn't do it for themselves to help shift and move the energy. I was asked to grieve for them and feel the grief moving through me and through the land and through the consciousness itself and their bodies on their behalf. It was one solution that I feel really did assist the departed with being freed. And that's when I deeply, really, really, really recognized that all lost or entrapped souls, you have to get to the root of their pain. You have to get to the root of their grief in order to release them. Um, Successful clearings, let's say you're trying to help someone in the departed cross, they will not be successful if you do not speak to that spirit or soul's grief to get them to move. So you can go in and say, I call in the holy light and da da da, cleanse and clear, da 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 da, but it really won't truly lift it unless you go into it and you provide acknowledgement and you provide the rectification that the grief and the pain needs. So um, I think that's just very, very significant. I think if there's any message I have for you today and what I've recently encountered was that if you're a healer, right? If you're a medium, if you're someone who does this type of spiritual work, it's not about self judgment if you're accessing lower density or lower vibrational frequencies and consciousness, right? There's like a spiritual ego that comes in and it's like, oh, I'm not that, so I'm not going to stoop myself down to that level and da 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 da. You can still come down and you can still access to do the work that's necessary to relieve grief while still attaining your higher consciousness and your higher vibration. And you can still do that work without taking the grief on and embodying it as your own entirely. Um, there's ways to work within that, within recognizing and just being fully aware and conscious 360 degrees. The more conscious you are of what's occurring and how it's occurring and how that feels within you, the more you can confirm that, yes, this isn't binding to me. I'm just accessing it because I can feel it. I can feel it. And feeling doesn't have to be the same as taking it on to a point that it's disabling you in some way, if that kind of makes sense. So I'm finding that grief and sorrow are two extremely important vibrations that we honestly take for granted. We we honestly rarely activate that range of empathy in our emotions. And it's a reason why the land and the world and the collective and the majority of people stay in the devastation timelines. So humanity's empathy really needs to upgrade at this time in order to raise the vibration, consciousness, and frequency of how we care for one another and how we truly heal the world. We have to access those range of empathy in our emotions to unbind these entrapped souls. And sometimes it's our own soul we have to work on first. Sometimes it's our own healing we have to acknowledge first. Again, putting the pin in things, like I said before, that just does not work anymore because the body's so sensitive now to frequency, emotions, and vibrations. And the body's only going to continue to become more sensitive as we go through our planetary ascension and evolution. We're meant to become more sensitive. We're meant to feel more. We're meant to perceive more in terms of our emotions and our vibration and our psychic perceptions and our spiritual perceptions. We're meant to have this range of depth. So whether it feels like, oh, it's just activating for the first time and I'm just so sensitive, or it feels like a slow progression, For me, it's a slow progression that can only continues to strengthen, only continues to become more and more. And so it's better to start working with the things that are presenting and showing you have to work with than to reject it. And that's when you get the body crash, technically. But essentially, also what I have found with the activation of the Christed light is that Christ himself was a grid worker. Christ himself went to all of these very high nodal peak points and spoke and got the land activations in which many of us grid workers are doing now. Okay, we're walking almost the same path with the ascended masters. And going back to grief, this is why Christ could heal people. This is why Christ could miraculously heal people, right? Why people came to Christ for healings was because Christ knew the root of grief in each person. He knew the root of sorrow. He felt that. He connected with that. He allowed their hearts to be felt and seen. And this is the reason why Christ could heal so many, so many. Your range of empathy is your ticket to Christed consciousness and full compassion for all, unity for all. And for some of us right now, we have to take on this work. For those of us that are true psychics, true seers, true healers, truly to the code, like we walk the earth in sovereignty to restore humanity, whether it's on all levels, right? Indigo type 1, 2, 3, or 4. We have to embrace these gifts right now. I think that it's difficult for us because we feel like it can be judged, but we really should set these things aside and um, bound ourselves to the movement of the Christed resurrection within, and which is one who is able to miraculously heal and tune into grief, because grief, it is compelled in the primordial imprints of separation. And it's overlooked, it's judged, it's ravaged by the negative ego. Any sign of weakness is an attack. Okay? Grief is seen as weak. And if it's unattended to and stuffed down, this is when people become on the verge of collapse. People dying from a broken heart is a real thing. Okay? And if you die from a broken heart, guess what? Especially somewhere where there's no open passageways, where the inner earth portals and the soul river lines are not open, you might get stuck in a purgatory realm. And if another soul doesn't come along to release your grief, that might be a hard way to go. So this is about truly releasing grief. This is about balancing the awareness of duality here and the multidimensionality within duality. Because duality is a labyrinth within a duality labyrinth within a duality labyrinth within a duality labyrinth. It splits and multiplies within each duality. Okay, and so there's so much infinite potential within it. But the main ones that we're working with is the duality of hope and loss, the duality of transformation, of tragedy and comedy, the Saturnian implications of illusion and inception, and the cruelty in which follows behind that, and the duality between joy and grief. All of this was deeply equally present at Mt.Pinnacle, and I do feel that gives us a very clear indication of the health of the rest of America, this being such a central apex point in which the cave systems and the crystal veins are emanating the truth of this consciousness that's binding the American collective here. So, how do we work on the inner earth passageways? I think one of the first things that we have to do is we probably should be boycotting a lot of this exploitation of false history narratives and illusions and just impure ones being in control of these passageways and inner earth gate systems. We have to get the control or the power out of the hands of those in which seek to exploit cave systems, vein systems, inner earth passageways, blocking the portals, blocking the ports, blocking the crystal, the ley lines, all of that. We need to really understand this dynamic. And then I think we have to also work more on clearing the planetary J seal system. This is one of the major blocking systems for nurturing energy in the land from the feminine principle. That's what the J seal removal is about. and it's clearing the feminine energy, but that's what it's meant to do. That's their natural death seals. So think about that. If they're using the J seals all along the East Coast to block those inner Earth passageways, okay, from receiving any sort of energetic or spiritual assistance from the Atlantic Ocean, running crucifixion, persecution, and wounding into the apex of the crystal cavern systems, all the crystals are being encoded with first dimensional frequency. Technically, they're being encoded with the blockage and the wounding in which the J cell systems, the death fields, want to run into the earth. And so it's tapping us off from the resources of the Atlantic waters, the resources of the Appalachian Mountains, the resources of Niagara Falls, the resources of the high nodal peak points and mounds, our ancestral mounds. And it's really the source of the crystal modification technology and weapon systems. And I don't think we can think for a second that that's only playing out on the East Coast. They're pinned there to run across the nation entirely and access all crystal cavern systems across the United States. So I think, for one, we need to recognize those blockages. Hence, one of the reasons why I did the J seal removal at the Christ of the Ozarks statue while I was there. So I'm going to tell you guys about that. But on the West Coast, we also have the HARP systems, right? We also have the HAARP systems. And this is running from Alaska to California down to Hawaii. And they're blocking off energetic resources here as well and running frequency fences deeply down the underground connection points that would draw up immensely the healing energies from the Pacific waters to the Americas. So, I mean, they're blocking things on the East Coast, they're blocking things on the West Coast. I think we really need to tune in terms of J seal removal on a personal level and on a collective grid level and start doing J seal removals at places in which crucifixion is known to be binded, such as the Christ of the Ozarks, which is the largest Christ statue in the North Americas. I didn't realize that that was there, and I didn't realize that I would just so synchronistically and magically find that place. Um, and I did a J sale removal there with my good friend that accompanied me. So I think it's very significant because these are crucifixion pilgrimage sites. This is the representation of Christed consciousness here, and most that are coming to serve that are holding the J seals in the body. So they're very um, ceremonial, they're very ritualistic, and they're very specific for the higher purpose of God's sovereignty and spiritual rights and freedoms amongst God's sovereign ability to believe in a free sense. And so I really recommend J seal removals at this time. Now that we're going into these months again, that we're having so much convergence, the 1111 portal, all of it, it's time to do J seal removals. So if you haven't done this, I can leave a video down in the description for ways to remove these yourself, or you can book a session with me. I do J seal removals. I've been doing them for a long time now, and they're very thorough. They're very significant and life-changing, and I highly recommend doing a J seal removal, especially prior to any grid work that you may be doing as well, because you don't want to be carrying those distortions and those imprints into the land if you're working on the land for sovereignty and freedom. And so I'll leave a link down below for J seal removal. My schedule is really open for November and December, so I should be able to get you in quickly, and I look forward to doing a J seal removal with you. Now, I want to just show you a picture of the Christ of the Ozarks. So this was the Christ of the Ozarks that I went to. This is where I performed a J seal removal, and the place where we have the largest Christ statue in the North Americas, where the Christ energy is radiant here in Arkansas, just so synchronistically, right, for the dove light activation. Christ of the Ozarks is a statue located in Eureka Springs, Carroll County, on top of Magnetic Mountain. It's a white mortar figure of Jesus Christ. It is 7 stories tall and weighs almost 2 million pounds. And the statue is one of 5 giant statues of Christ in the world, one of only 2 in North America. It was sculpted by Emmett A. Sullivan and funded by the Elna M. Smith Foundation. And what's interesting about this and why I think it's so significant, again, to do the J seal removals here is because these statues are anchored in with magnetic beams into the magnetism or the magnetic vortices in the mountain. And this being the key factor in these is this is actually running the codes into the ground. This is running the codes into the mountain. This is running the codes into the veins, into the soul river lines. And so those magnetic rods and beams and anchors into the magnetic field of the mountain it's very significant, and I think it's how they amplify the holy energy and presence around the statues. So the largest one, you guys, is down in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And I have to say, this does feel like somewhat of a very important calling in which J seal removal should ultimately be being performed in locations such as Christ of the Ozarks or Rio de Janeiro in Brazil because of the quest of the crucified, the pilgrimage of the quest of the persecuted pilgrimages that are being seeked and sought after in these crucified hot zones. These are hot zones. Magnetically speaking, in the grids are the locations on Earth in which the rips and tears in the Earth sustain themselves. So be very clear that J seal removal is about removing crucifixion wounding, not about disconnecting one from Christ consciousness, but removal of the fallen programs and the enslavement and the fallen world mentalities and the soul condemnation and the fear and the wrath and the hatred of the jealous, envious, and lustful God, the fratricidal gods, okay, the negative alien gods, and what has been implanted due to the Council of Nicaea. And affected our God's sovereignty over thousands and thousands of years of MK Ultra and psycho-spiritual warfare that has been unleashed upon humanity to make us believe that we are unworthy of God's love and we are not capable of ascension, and to give people some sort of blanket security that of if they turn their backs on God, that we are in some way redeemed from choosing a life that doesn't focus on the path of enlightenment. Okay, taking this like distortion out. We can choose to live halfway, live it partially, tune in and tune out because we have to go through the wounded sun to get there anyways, according to the J seals. Okay, so everyone truly needs to have these removed because what they're holding back truly is your own ability to speak enlightenment. Okay, your own ability to embody the attributes and qualities of God yourself. It makes you doubt your own prophetism. It makes you doubt your own messianism or messianism and the development of spirit within ourselves. Okay, we have to have this free of doubt, judgment, fear, and blockages for us to move forward in terms of our spiritual growth and enlightenment. Because because truly, if each individual embodied this, especially the divine feminine as enlightened messengers of God, all on earth would ultimately be transformed in God, and the dark forces do not want this. Their priorities are geared to consistently trick and test everything built to make you crumble and cower and give in your will, your free will for it. The resistance and duality constantly bending the spoon, so to speak, to say, look, it's happening, so it must be true. It must be okay. As we hand over our consent, there must be a reason for this. I can justify this according to my own consent when you're being tricked under the veils of illusion. One of the things I really deeply seen at Mt.Pinnacle was the Saturn moon chains, the Satanism and the force of trickery, deception, and lies. And this is truly what I do believe happened to the natives. They were tricked, they were deceived, and they were lied to. And this led to their downfall. This led to their destruction. This led to them not being able to trust who came into their world, right? And the programming and the framework of consciousness in every second of the mind, it's tricking. And this isn't coming from God, okay? This is coming from Saturnianism. This is coming from very powerful portals that were ripped open, and we're connecting right into the mission work that we were doing at Mt.Pinnacle in Arkansas from Rome, from the Vatican. The Vatican uh, passageways were very connected to Mt.Pinnacle. There was a black hole wormhole system from Rome, and it brought in a fair ground of trickery. And it was inserting program after program, making people think and believe those programs were real, making mockery and jokes of distortions. Okay? Completely blind to its character, its signature, and its quality within the psyche. Many do not recognize this on a daily basis, but this is always occurring around us in our environment. It's essentially the Saturnian force and trickery and deception, which is, I do believe, is the same force behind Rome and the same force behind the Trail of Tears. It's essentially invisible. It takes one with a very um, I would say upgraded and accelerated awakening within perceptions of the two eyes and the third eye within every framework of the mind. Okay, otherwise you can't see it. Okay, because it's inserted into your thoughts and the trickery and the tactics and the bait and the persuasiveness and the manipulation. It's inserted in your own thoughts and your own perception of your environment and reality. So the discernment it takes to be able to recognize it. Okay, because there's a cruelty behind the 1D. There's a cruelty at the core of the Saturnian function. It laughs at you when you fall deception to its trickery. It laughs at you when you fall deception to its drama. It cruelly engages in tragedy and comedy against you in the illusion of deception, in which it preys mostly intently on the mind. Again, just because you think you see it in your reality doesn't mean that it's meant to be there, that it's good for you, that it's supporting humanity, that it's helping. So the awareness comes back to really getting into the heart, really getting into knowing at your true core what is meant to be for us and for the earth and humanity, and really, really looking at what is serving the highest good of the evolution of humanity. Okay, most things we see in everyday life, including cars, trucks, businesses, consistent interchanging and variables in the human exchanges in cities and communities and environments, they're all artificially, structurally there to deceive you from the truth of your existence. So, guys, I say this because I've just had such a big awakening around this. I've seen how it's been playing out, and I see how it's not anybody's fault because the warfare truly is an unconscious, and it's a war on the mind. It's a war on consciousness, and all forces within the veils of illusion seek to dominate and prosper in that unconscious space. And so it is like full on fair game. But that's why we have to start systematically removing the implants and the illusions in which we know are not meant to be there. J seals being the first ones that really, really need to continue to go. So I just want to hope this message reaches you in a beautiful place and space today, and hopefully it shifted some perceptions and some thoughts around some things and maybe brought some aid to any sort of separation or fear or grief that you may be feeling, something maybe you have to work through personally with family and crossed over loved ones, or grid worker wise in terms of understanding how much more work we really have to do on the Americas. I really have a strong call in my heart that it needs to be a deep central focus for us as grid workers to keep working on the North Americas. Um, and I do feel that my next mission will boots on the ground will most likely be in Brazil because I might be heading to the next Christ statue to do another J seal removal. So I may be putting that together soon. Drop it down in the comments if you think Brazil is a location in which you'll want to attend. Also, with the guidance that I've gotten around grief with grief as well, talking about the Amazon and the rainforest and the lungs of the earth, that this being a very significant focus for the relief of grief collectively within humanity. It's all being cycled there, really truly. So Arkansas to the Amazon, they're very connected. There's definitely a birth line and a ley line and a soul line there that's connecting both those points, connecting the centralized grief from the North Americas to the South, because those Amazonian rainforests have to then process it. So, yeah, Brazil is on the next it's on the schedule for the next boots on the ground mission. So I'll be putting that together soon and getting things out to you guys. I'm also considering doing another Gridwork Facilitator course in January 2025. So, yeah, I'll be back soon with another update. I hope this awakened you with love, and vigilance at this time and discernment at this time, as it's truly needed now more than it ever has been before, as we get heightened abilities and awareness within the psychic realm and the merging and converging. But we also have to also be more aware of a lot of things as well. So, yeah, I love you guys so much.